John Meadows, thank you for joining us on the show today.
My pleasure. I appreciate the invite.
John, for the people that may not know who you are, as bizarre as that might sound in the health and fitness world, can you just give us a really quick highlight reel of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I coach people. I have a website called mountaindogdiet.com where I sell programs and things of that nature. I coach some top Olympians in the sport. I'm a professional myself. I turned pro in 2015 and did 9 pro shows like really quickly in the span of a couple of years. Started competing when I was 13 years old. I'm about to turn 49 now. So I've been in the sport a long time. And I'm one of the veterans that's, kind of seen a lot of people come and go, but I've always loved the sport and been involved with it. I also own a supplement company called Granite Supplements. And so I'm quite busy these days.
It certainly seems like it. I'm really interested in where that love for bodybuilding came from. So obviously been doing it for such a long time. Were you always into sports, things like that, growing up, like football, I'm guessing, being over there in Ohio?
Yeah, I was in football. I ran track. I played baseball for a little bit. I wrestled for a long time. But football was what I really enjoyed. That's what I really loved. I like track too. I enjoyed track. I was just not very good at it. So I would get in the sport and play just because it was fun. But like I said, I started bodybuilding when I was a very young age. And the reason why I got into it is I just liked the way the people looked. I just thought it was really cool. I just saw how they looked in magazines. And, back then we had Muscle and Fitness and Flex were the 2 primary magazines. And I saw, the guys, the Lee Haney's, the Sergio Olivas, the Tom Platzes. I saw those guys and I just really liked it. I just thought, man, I'd really like to do this someday, be a pro bodybuilder. So I had that goal in my head at that very young age. And, there was really, I don't really have a story like, I don't know, people were picking on me or whatever, or I was trying to impress girls. I just loved bodybuilding. I just always did. And perhaps that's the reason I still do it. Perhaps that's why I still train so hard is I've just always really enjoyed the challenge. I enjoy the mental feeling I get after a workout, how I feel like, wow, that was good. I don't do some of the stuff now that I used to do, but it's one of those deals where you train really hard, you do a lot of crazy stuff, and then you surprise yourself. You're like, wow, I didn't know I was capable of that. So, there's a lot of satisfaction you get out of pushing yourself and, getting better and better. And certainly there's no other, sport like bodybuilding where you just got to get better constantly, or you just kind of fall behind everybody else. So I always like that. And I like the fact that the work I put into it's the work I got out of it. That's the drawback with team sports is you can be really passionate, but if your teammates aren't really passionate, you're not going to win as a team. And I like that aspect of bodybuilding too at a young age. It's like, well, if I work really hard, I could actually do well. And it doesn't matter how everybody else is training in the gym. It's how I'm training in the gym and how I'm eating food. So those are the things that really kind of drew me to it initially.
Do you remember who was sort of the dominant force in the industry on the covers of all Flex magazines? Was it Haney? Was it Platz? Or was it just one particular person that just seemed to be everywhere at that point in time?
Well, at that point, it was Lee Haney. In 1985, he had just won his second Mr. Olympia. And, he's got these legendary pictures. He's got this one picture where he's standing over by a sewer and like the smoke's coming out of the sewer and he's hitting that double bicep and he's got his blue jeans on. And, that picture was one of my favorite pictures of all time. Just the V taper he had, the little waist, the crazy lats, really dense chest. But yeah, back then, he was kind of the young lion. And then Rich Gaspari came in 1985 as well, the Olympiad. He was in his early 20s. And he got third in that show. And, that's when Mike Christian was coming up, Barry DeMay, Bob Paris was still competing then. Bob Paris was on a lot of covers of magazines. Sergio was, he would have been 8th in that Mr. Olympia. So yeah, that was a good time for bodybuilding.
So I want to go back to you just naturally getting into bodybuilding in general, just finding that love and that passion initially for it. How important do you think that was for you to have such a long, sustainable career, like genuinely finding and following your passion?
Well, I think, we're all driven by different things. And I always wanted to work really hard physically at a young age. And, after wrestling practice, I'd come home and eat, and then I'd go out and run. And, I didn't have anybody telling me to do any of that stuff. It was all self motivation. I grew up with a grandmother, and so I didn't have a dad that was telling me, you got to do this. I did have some coaches around me as I got older, like in the high school, that were really helping me out. I had one coach that used to take me to drive an hour away to where I live now in Columbus, but I'm from about an hour south of here, and he used to bring me up here and take me to the good gyms, and because he knew I really liked to train and lift weights. And so I had some good people that cared about me that kind of helped me out, got me into some gyms, and for no other reason than they just supported me. So, that was pretty nice too. But, for me, it's just hard to explain to people. Like if you don't have it, you just don't have it. I can't like take that passion I have and I can't just give it to somebody. They have to have there's at least needs to be a little fire burning inside. And then you can kind of stoke that fire. But if they don't have it, they just don't have it. And I understand that because we all have fires for different things. We all have something that we weren't really want to do well. It could be being a teacher, it could be, being a doctor, saving lives, it could be anything. So that just happened to be where my passion was. And I followed up with it. A lot of people talk about how they want to do things and they never do anything. I mean, when I talk at seminars, I always tell them think about what you want to do. And then you got to think about what are you doing on a daily basis. So if you say you want to be a great strength coach, but you're not doing anything on a daily basis to improve your knowledge or to improve your strength training knowledge, how's that going to work for you? I can tell everybody oh, I want to be a great bodybuilder, but if I don't ever train hard and I don't ever eat right, then is that going to work? Probably not. So, I think I understood that at a young age. I think people a lot of times don't figure it out until they get older. Oh, wow, I actually have to work at this. Now I don't know if I want to do it anymore. But, at a young age, I knew that okay, if I want this to happen, I got to make it happen. And so that was always my mindset. What can I do to get closer to my goal every single day? Consistency, year in and year out.
Yeah, it's super interesting. We talk about passion, right? It's a difficult thing to try to explain to people who may not have felt that way. I was trying explain it a way of it's not so much that you're being pushed towards it, it's being something like you're being pulled towards it, like it's dragging you towards it, and you've got no choice, you have to come down this path, and it's your decision whether you go, okay, I'm gonna let this flow take me, or I'm gonna veer right and go down the path of doing some dumb shit somewhere else.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So with that, I think it's really interesting to say that a lot of people with I guess the rise of social media, seeing a lot of bodybuilders, seeing a lot of the Olympians now, and we're aspiring to look like that. If someone's like, that's what I want, that's the goal, I want to be, I want to be the next Ronnie Coleman or Arnold Schwarzenegger, I want to leave this legacy, but and you see them and they're not putting in the necessary effort. If you were to give some advice to that person, what would you say to them? Would you say, hey, look, this may be not right for you because it takes a significant amount of discipline and consistency to get to where you want to be. It's not just a pretty thing that you put on social media or on your Instagram page. It's a legit sport. It's an art form. You have to put so much more into it than just pretty pictures.
Yeah. So two things come to mind. The conversation would probably look something like this. What do you want to do? Then the person says, I want to be Mr. Olympia. And I would ask them, do you really think what you're doing right now is going to get you there? And if they tell you yes, but that's not true, then you have to educate them. No, this isn't, there's a lot more to this than what you think. And I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, I want to be a pro next year. And I'm like, great. Have you competed before? And they're like, no. I'm like, it's not that easy. You don't wake up one day and you just go, I want to be a pro next year. There's a level of work that has to be put in. And then you got to win certain shows for that to happen. It doesn't just happen on its own. You can't just declare yourself a pro. You know, you can do that in poker, but you can't do that in bodybuilding, right? So, you know, and then maybe someone is putting in the work. Maybe they just don't quite have the genetics for it. And you got to be realistic with people. There is a genetic component to bodybuilding. There just is. You can't escape it. So maybe the conversation is, you know what? Let's focus on being a city champion first. Let's see if we can do that. And if we can do that, let's see if we can be a state champion. And if we can do that, let's go to a regional show. So sometimes you just got to kind of, I wouldn't tell someone just to quit. Let's just readjust your goals. Let's make it something more attainable. And let's just try to do that. And let's just be intelligent about our goal setting, because, you know, you want to set aggressive goals, but you don't want to be unrealistic to the point where people just fail and then they quit. Like, you can reframe goals and make them more realistic. You can actually build success that way. You know, somebody wins and they get a little confidence. So they get a little better, then they get a little bit better. Next thing you know, it might be a long road for them. It might be 10, 15 years, but eventually they're making good headway. And then some people, I guess there's more than two things that came to mind. There's a third thing. And then some people, you know, you just got to tell them, like, I hear what you're saying, but your actions don't show that. You don't seem to be real serious. So I would say find something you are real serious about and apply yourself, whatever that is. You know, if it's being a medic or whatever that is, being a teacher, you know, figure out what it is that you want to do, and, you know, go for it and focus. Like, it's kind of sad that people would kind of go through life and not have any like goal, you know, of what they want to do. It could be, like I said, it could be a good parent. It could be a good teacher. There's all kinds of things you can do. So, you know, try to figure out what that is, and then go for it. But none of this happens if your actions don't match the goal. Like I said, if your goal is to be a certain thing, then your daily actions have to match that. If they don't, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I guess this is what people don't understand, is that for every person, you know, like them wanting to be a pro bodybuilder, there's also thousands of other people that are willing to put in that work, that are doing it every single day, that may already be genetically blessed, that may already have a head start on them. You know, like, look, you've got to beat a lot of fucking people if you want to get to Mr. Olympia. So you've got to be willing to work harder than everybody else.
Yeah, you got to put in the work. That's right.
So with them, obviously on your journey, overcoming specific failures, maybe not winning a show, do you remember a show that you may not have won that you were particularly pissed about? And do you remember what your actions were after that?
Oh man. So first of all, I've done over 70 shows, right? That's a lot of shows. There's a couple that come to mind. And, you know, when you've done that many shows, you're probably going to be on the good end of some deals where maybe you shouldn't have, and you're probably going to be on the bad end of some deals where maybe you should have done better. And it's a subjective sport, and I think it's important for people to realize sometimes the chips fall your way, sometimes they don't. So you can't really let the placings dictate how you feel. I always tell people, I have a 24-hour rule. If you're mad about your placing, that's cool for 24 hours. But when that 24 hours is up, it's time to move on, right? So for me, there was only really one show that was, I walked out of it and just felt like really bad. And that was, the year I did the Arnold Classic. And the Arnold Classic was one of my lifetime dreams to do that show. And I suffered a great deal physically and mentally to get in the kind of shape I did for that show. And I was in very good condition. If you find some pictures, you'll see that I think it's pretty safe to say, the leanest, or at least one of the top 2 or 3 leanest guys in the show. And they didn't really look at me at that show. Like, you can tell as your competitor, you can see the judges and you can see how their eyes are going, who they're looking at. And they didn't really look at me. And so I had a terrible placing. And, you know, I had a lot of family that come to see me that don't normally get to see me compete. So I had expectations that I would at least be placed fairly, and the crowd was going crazy for me. And that was probably the biggest letdown I've had in terms of placing. Now, being able to do the event was outstanding, because that was one of my lifelong goals. So it was sweet and sour, right? It was sweet from the perspective of that was what I really wanted to do. I wanted to be in that show. Like, ever since that show started, I don't remember if it was 1988 or 89, but it was around that time. I wanted to be in that show. And then once I got to that show, I really felt like I put in the work that I should have been looked at, but I didn't really get looked at. So it's frustrating. But again, 70 some shows, that's the only one that comes to mind with me thinking, I probably got hosed a little bit. So overall, I feel like I was always judged very fairly. And I can't really complain. There's probably some shows too that I placed better than I should have. There's probably people that should have beat me. That's just kind of how the ball bounces.
Do you remember your actions after that show? As in, how did it affect your mindset for training, for nutrition? Was it a case of have the 24 hours, be pissed, be annoyed, and then
No, I'm still mad. And it's 6 years later. It's 6 years later and I still think about it, but it didn't change my actions. I continued to train hard. It had zero effect on my training and nutrition, like zero. It was just deep down inside, it hurt. It hurt. But it didn't change my actions though. Like I didn't okay, I'm going to go binge and eat like ice cream for 2 weeks, or I'm just going to quit training. The heck with this. No, I just went back to work. In fact, I competed again in 5 more shows that year. And so I just went back to work. I just said, okay, it wasn't my day. They didn't look at me. I'm going to go do some more shows and they will look at me. And so that's what I did.
And I think that's the importance of that discipline for long enough that it instills this behavior of this is just what I do anyway. And once you get to that stage, I think, as you said there, it's overcoming that failure isn't quite as difficult. It's like, okay, cool. Well, they didn't look at me this time. Next time they will. And I'm just going to get straight back to work rather than feeling sorry for this.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So for people that may not have that discipline, may not have that mindset, they've potentially just started, done a couple of shows, still in very, very good shape, the results may not have gone the way they want it to, but they go down the sort of destructive path of going, fuck this, I'm going to jump straight into binge eating and I'm not going to compete anymore. What would you say to that person to, I guess, give them a bit more guidance to get back on track?
Well, I think as a human being, it's natural to have those things happen to you. Like I had a lot of shows where we used to have this street pretty close to where I was living at the time. It was called Morse Road. And Morse Road is where all the fast food restaurants were. You had Pizza Hut, you had McDonald's, you had Kentucky Fried Chicken, you had White Castle, you had Friendly's Ice Cream. And I remember competing, and I remember going from one restaurant, one place, eating, the next place. And I remember I gained, I want to say it was 25 or 30 pounds in 3 or 4 days. And I remember, she's not here. It's a story about my wife. She was standing behind me. So just before I was married, so I went to pick up my, at the time, I guess she was my girlfriend. Yeah. And so she's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, your face is all bloated. And it was. I looked like I had a giant pumpkin head because my face was so bloated. So we were driving somewhere and my nose started bleeding. And she was like, what are you doing? And, I was like, yeah, I think I ate a little bit too much this weekend. So, but it happens to everybody. Like we all go on our little binges and all that. But what happened to me was I got really bad shin splints, which is weird, right? But I had so much water retention, my shins hurt really bad. And it hurt so bad I could barely walk. And I never wanted that to happen again. So I actually just said, I'm never binge eating again. So what I would do is after the show, I might have, a piece or 2 or pizza or something like that, but I just never went crazy again. But, so I would tell someone, like, if you've had that happen, it's okay, man. It happens to the best of us. Just learn from it. And the other thing I would say is one thing that really helped me was just including cheat meals. And I know a lot of people like to say, oh, you're not hardcore. Oh, we never had cheat meals in the 90s and 80s. And there is some truth to that. But there's also truth to, if you give yourself 1 meal a week, let's say you're a typical bodybuilder and you eat 6 meals a day. So you have 42 meals a week. If 41 out of 42 of those meals are spot on, it's not going to kill you to have a little extra for one of those meals. And the nice thing is, if you have a little cheat meal, like when I was competing, my wife and I would go to Five Guys or something like that on Friday or Saturday night. You've had a little bit of fun. So you're good. Then when the show's over, you're like, well, I actually had a cheat meal every Friday night, all the way until the show. So you don't feel as desperate to eat a bunch of junk because you kind of enjoyed yourself with that one meal a week. That was something that was really helpful for me. And I would say for people that don't include cheat meals because they feel like they're doing something bad, a lot of this stuff is not just physical, it's mental. And if having a few extra calories on a Friday night and one meal a week, like that shouldn't derail progress that you've made the other 41 out of 42 meals. So, hey, just have a little bit of fun, relax a little bit. And I think overall, from the big picture, like if you're scared you're not going to be in shape, then just start 2 weeks sooner. Instead of starting 12 weeks out, start 14 weeks out. It never was a problem for me. Like I was always in really good condition. If I took that cheat meal, it didn't matter. In fact, I think it probably helped me because I wasn't stressed out all the time. Like, okay, now I got to have a little fun, get to hang out with the family, hang out with the wife. So I don't feel as stressed out now. So I think little things like that can also help.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Some people do wear it as a badge of honor of like, I don't have no cheat meals. You're like, cool, but you also just hated the last 16 weeks of your prep, but some people can do, and that's absolutely fine. I know, not that I've done a bodybuilding show, but I've done a couple of photo shoots, and as long as I had, and these were homemade and all my macros are tracked, and it was just homemade pancakes. It was just like every Saturday morning, as long as I could have that one meal for whatever reason, as you said, like psychologically, I was like, I'm good now. I've had that meal. I'm ready to get straight back on track. And the other, as you said, 41 meals or so were just on point. And that little bit of, I don't know, sugar or whatever, it might have been in that meal that helped satisfy me even from a physiological perspective, I know that my stress levels were way lower just having that meal. So potentially less water retention, felt tighter, whatever the physiological outcome was, it worked. It really, really did.
Well, the interesting thing too, is if you talk to a lot of people on their diets, they'll tell you to have a cheat meal and they'll wake up even lighter the next day. Like, how does that work? Calories in, calories out. Well, I just had an extra 500 calories and I actually lost weight. So it's obviously doing something positive for your metabolism.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to without, to definitively say exactly what it is, but it's funny when you're eating it, like you'll start sweating sometimes. Like if you're really deep into a diet and then you have the cheat meal, you'll start sweating. It's like, what is that? Well, is your body temperature? Is more T4 converting to T3? I don't know. It could be a lot of things, but I don't think it's as destructive as people make it out to be. Now, you do have exceptions. You do have people that just can't control themselves and they go nuts. But I would argue you may not even want to compete if you're one of those people. There's something that you have to address there mentally. Maybe this isn't the healthiest sport for you. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a good way. Like, there's probably things that are more important that you fix mentally, just for your own good. But just generally speaking overall, yeah, and then, now you have a little bit of leeway, you have flexible dieting, which I'm okay with to a degree, if your macros are similar and most of the food you're eating is still, I don't know, healthy whole foods, I guess you'd call it. But like you mentioned, pancakes, it's very easy to make healthy pancakes. Yesterday morning, I had some protein waffles. There's things that you can do too, to kind of alleviate some of that mental stress too. There's foods that you can make are a little healthier, I think, than people believe. So, we never had flexible dieting in the 80s or 90s. I can tell you that. Like, there was no such thing. The flexible dieting was, are you going to have tuna or tilapia? That was the flexibility right there.
Yeah.
So now I think everybody understands dieting a little bit better now. And as long as you use a reasonable approach, I don't think it's so bad either.
Yeah, I think we often forget that the body's a scientific equation, not a mathematical one. If it was maths, it'd be like, cool, 1 + 1 is 2, but in the body, it's 1 + 1 could be 7, or it could be 19, or it could be 2. So there's a lot of things going on that we don't know. And by monitoring those metrics of like, well, I had burger and fries at Five Guys, and I was lighter in the morning. You're like, okay, cool. I'm going to monitor that. I'm going to put that down, just so I'm trying to get an understanding of what's happening with my specific physiology.
Yeah. And then the next day you might get a great pump. You might be strong. You might have a better workout. So yeah.
In obviously today's day and age, as I briefly touched on, was a lot more people want to get into the sport and the art form that is bodybuilding. In your opinion, in your experience, John, what does it actually take to compete as a professional bodybuilder?
Well, let me tell you what it doesn't require. It doesn't require that you don't have a job. A lot of people say, oh, you can't have a job and be a pro bodybuilder. Okay, that's nonsense. And that's why most pro bodybuilders are broke and don't have any money. You can very easily have a job, make a good living for yourself, and still be a pro bodybuilder, right? So that's number one. You do have to be like a Terminator, man. You do have to be like a machine. You know, you can't just wake up and go, I wonder if I'm going to go to the gym today. Like, no, you don't have, that's not a decision. You go to the gym. You can't wake up and say, maybe I'll just eat 4 meals a day instead of 6, or maybe instead of eating my normal food today, I'll just eat at the pizza buffet all day. Like there is a level of discipline that you have to have. Now, you know, I can hear people crying now, oh, you know, there's no flexibility in your plan. No, that's not true. Like there's some days, you know, you just got to do what you got to do to make it. Maybe it's a meal here and there, maybe ease up on your workout. But I'm saying in general, 95% of the time, you've got to be a machine. You've got to eat, you've got to train. You can't escape that. If you aren't consistent with those variables, then you become reliant on genetics, and you better hope you have God-given genetics. Because if you don't have God-given genetics, you're never gonna get to your potential. And the other thing is there's all kinds of people now that like to criticize people who do really hard sets. Like I see it in the industry all the time. You're doing too much. You're doing too much. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, recovery should be a priority right at the top of your list. How to recover from a hard workout is every bit as important as doing the hard workout. But there is a level of hard work involved. I don't know any really good pro bodybuilders that aren't willing to push yourself really hard in the gym. But yet I see all these people on social media going, oh, you're doing too much. Oh, hold back. You know, you don't need to do that much. I just saw this study with these 6 guys that said they don't need to take any sets to failure. Come on. I mean, let's be realistic. All the people that are talking about that, none of them are pro bodybuilders. None of them have maximized their potential. So there is a level of intensity involved that I think has to be there. And you just have to figure out how much intensity it is. You know, how high can you go on that intensity level and still recover? Those two things have to support each other. But you know, so I think that consistency and that hard work, they have to be there.
What are the couple of biggest lessons that you took specifically from bodybuilding that you learned along your way that you maybe have been unaware of?
You mean in terms of life lessons?
Yeah.
Well, you got to realize how much I love bodybuilding. I've done it my whole life. But at some point, you got to realize that your relationships are more important than bodybuilding. And I've seen so many people over the years that have had broken relationships that was probably caused by bodybuilding in one way or another, because one person was really selfish. And, you know, I could see myself going down that path because I was so committed. You know, you see Arnold, you see Pumping Iron, you hear Arnold go, well, I didn't go to my dad's funeral. I'm focused. I'm too focused. So everybody likes to say, well, you know, Arnold said that he didn't go to a funeral, you know, so I just got to focus on myself. And bodybuilding, you do have to be disciplined. But I also think that you just got to be careful about relationships, and you got to make sure that you nurture important relationships to you. And it's hard to do on a daily basis. And now think about how hard it is when you're eating 1,800 calories and you're starving and you're tired all the time. Then it becomes real challenging, right? And the only person who knows that is you. Like, you know how you feel. So you can't expect everyone around you to just say, oh, well, I understand. They don't, unless they compete, unless they've been there themselves. So it's not fair for you to expect other people to just understand that. You have to communicate, you have to talk, you have to do those things. So the reason why I bring that up is because when I do seminars, that's one of the things I like to really talk about. And that's, maintaining and or improving your relationships, even if you're dieting and competing. It is possible, it can be done. And certainly at a minimum, you at least want to maintain your relationships, right?
Mm.
So, you know, you hear the stories about people like going into like, you know, isolation almost, like they just disappear for 12 weeks and, you know, you don't see them for 12 weeks, you know. I mean, that sounds cool and all. Sounds really cool, but that's just not how life works. I mean, if you don't have any friends, then cool, you don't have to worry about it. If you don't have any friends and you don't have any family, then hey, that's fine. Who cares? But if you have family that you're close with, you have good friends, then you probably want to put some effort into those relationships.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest lessons I could teach people, though. Like, that's much more important to me than teaching you how to do a dumbbell curl.
I think people forget that it's what happens after the show, right? Like you've spent all this time prepping and you've spent 16 weeks cutting and been an emotional asshole for a while. And you're like, well, cool. Well, where do you think your relationships are going to be after that one show? And they've got to last you the rest of your life, the next 50 years of your life, you know? So I know, I know for me, even during my photo shoot, and I tried my best to do this, I probably didn't do it as well as I thought I would, but it was purposely setting time aside for my partner and be like, I need to make sure that she's okay with me doing what I'm doing, you know, and whether it was like a, you know, like a little, as it's going to be limited, obviously, when you're prepping, but like a little date night type thing, or just going out and be like, look, I maybe not be able to eat everything on that menu, but we can at least go to the movies, or we can at least go do something together, you know. And I think that's something that people could potentially keep in their, you know, the frontal consciousness of their mind and be like, look, I need to make sure that everyone around me is aware of what I'm about to go and do. And then along that journey, make sure that they're okay with me continuing doing what I'm doing.
Smart man. Yeah.
Well, again, like I said, I tried, but I don't know if I accomplished it. My girlfriend probably will tell you a different story. Like, no, he was a wanker. He didn't do any of that.
Well, if she's still your girlfriend, then you did something right.
Yeah, so. She's all right. She's all right. So, John, I'm really interested in routines, in how people are setting their lives up for success. And this might be different for you now, obviously, running Granite and obviously coaching and things of that nature. But what does the sort of first hour-ish of your day look like? Do you have a routine? Do you like to just get up and just do your thing? What does that look like?
Well, normally what happens is my dog starts whining at 7 a.m, and then my wife gets up and takes him out. And then I usually get up and I'll take my health supplements, and then I'll get in the shower, then I'll start working. And then my wife takes the kids to school, and then she comes back and I'll have breakfast, and then I'll go to the gym. Then I get back from the gym and I pick up back on my work. If I'm really tired, I might take a quick nap. And then, you know, that's how every single morning pretty much looks like. It's just like that. The evenings can vary, you know, because I might have like podcasts, or I don't know, they could be anything. The kids might have a practice or a game. They might have a game. So the evenings are a little bit different, but like the early part of the day is pretty much like that every single day.
I love that you just said that potentially it's still the morning, but you might have a quick nap. I'm a huge fan of morning naps. I think they're a life-changing thing. But I also think, am I just being really lazy here? Like it's like 11 a.m. and I'm having a nap.
Well, there are cultures that build naps into their schedules around lunchtime, right? There's whole cultures that do that. And
stuff, yeah.
I can't recall the details, but there was I want to say it was a Greek location where they stopped having their lunch naps, and heart disease and all these really serious illnesses skyrocketed percentage-wise among their population. So, you know, naps are probably a really, really good thing for reducing stress and just helping you feel better and be more healthy, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. Even if I've got like an afternoon of say podcasting or studying or something like that, just a quick little nap beforehand, like cognitively, just makes me feel like I've just woken up again and I'm ready to go. You know,
that's right, 100%. Yep.
I'm a big fan. I'm interested in what is the pre-workout meal at the moment for workouts? Is it the same as what you were when you bodybuilding? Obviously, do it for such a long time. Has it changed? What is the pre-workout of choice to optimize performance at the moment?
It's still pretty similar. Like I used to do a lot of cream of rice, and if you Google concoction bowl, you'll see this. I've made videos on it.
See,
Cream
I've
of
seen
rice.
it. Seen it.
Yeah, so the cream of rice, a little peanut butter, a little low sugar chocolate syrup, that's kind of the carbs, and a little protein powder. I still do that a lot, but now it's more oatmeal. So I'll just have some oatmeal with peanut butter, the low calorie chocolate syrup. So it's mostly more of the oatmeal dish with protein powder, and it used to be the cream of rice dish, but I still do the cream of rice too. So it honestly, it really hasn't changed a lot. It's still, I just enjoy that breakfast. I like the way it makes me feel.
Is the cream of rice just for faster digestion or easier digestion? Was that the purpose behind that? Because I don't
Yeah,
think
real
I'm not
easy
sure actually.
digestion. Yeah, it's not heavy in your stomach, real easy digestion, real light. So then when you train, because I'll train a half hour later. So it doesn't sit in your stomach. Yep.
What does your current training look like? Obviously not prepping or anything for anything. What does it look like at the moment? Are you still tracking total volume over the course of the week? Are you just getting in the gym and be like, I'm gonna do whatever I feel like, being this auto-regulated type of training? What are you doing at the moment?
I train whatever. So I take Wednesdays and Sundays off. I go 5 days a week, and I train whatever I think feels the best. Like what's the most recovered? So it could be anything. Like I might have legs rolling up on my schedule, but maybe my chest feels awesome and my legs are still a little, maybe not quite there. So okay, I'll do chest. So I literally prioritize whatever feels the most recovered. And then if everything is equal, then I train what I enjoy. So, if everything feels great, then I'm going to do chest. I love training chest. If you would have asked me 5, 10 years ago, I would have said legs. If everything's equal, I'm going to do legs. Um, I go through phases where I like to train certain body parts. And, I'm kind of in a chest phase right now where I just really enjoy chest training. So it's just whatever feels great. And, again, now my goals are a little different. Now I really want to, not that I haven't always enjoyed training, because obviously I do, but it's even more fun now. It's even more for enjoyment now. It's like, I love to do what's fun. I love to do different exercises. I hear people say, oh, so-and-so did the exact same routine for 15 years. I'm like, well, that's good for them, but that's not for me. I like to enjoy myself. I like to experiment. I like to try different exercises. Um, and I feel like if you really understood muscle physiology at the most basic level, it's just getting the muscle to experience mechanical tension and going close to failure. That's really what it is. So, you can tell me, well, you got to do the same exercise over and over. Well, no, you don't. Actually, you don't. Like, as a beginner and as an intermediate, you probably want to learn how to do those exercises. You want to practice them. You want to get good at them. But there's a certain point in your career where it's like, okay, I know how to bench press now. Like, okay, I know how to do a curl. So at that point, it just becomes, can you create mechanical stress on the muscle, and can you get close to failure so that you have muscle activation, and can you fatigue the fibers? Like, that's really it. Whether you're doing a dumbbell incline, a dumbbell decline, a machine fly, like, that's really what it's all about. And I think there's a whole lot of to do about doing the same stuff over and over. Well, I could also tell you that you can create a lot of itis injuries, tendonitis, inflammation from doing the same patterns over and over too. I could make that case. Ask any powerlifter that does the same lifts over and over, and they'll tell you, man, they get beat up, they get inflammation, they get their, medial lateral epicondylitis in their elbows, lower back gets beat up. So I like variety personally, and nothing works without intensity. Whether you're doing the same thing or whether you're doing different stuff, you've got to have the requisite amount of intensity too. So that's really what's going to drive people's results, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess it's looking at those sort of principles of training. As long as you're creating enough through intensity, mechanical stress, mechanical tension, going close to failure. Once you get a good understanding of just basic movement patterns, being good, adopting the skill acquisition of these movement patterns,
Yep.
and then it's sort of the, okay, cool. Now you've got your prerequisite, I guess, for lack of a better word, to go try new shit, to try different things. Because do you really just want to do a flat barbell bench press for 40 fucking years? I don't think so. Like, it gets pretty boring after a while. Like, okay, is there any other exercise I can do to stimulate the same muscles?
Yep, exactly.
I wanted to ask a sort of business related question here is, how do you think the lessons that you learn in bodybuilding transition to you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner obviously the Mountain Dog diet and granite as well. Do you think some of those correlated over?
Oh, for sure. So if you think about opening a business and being an entrepreneur, everybody thinks, like, I've never ever called myself an entrepreneur ever. But when you think about that, people like romanticize it. Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. It's fantastic. Well, the reality is when you start a new business, you better be prepared to work and work a lot. People have always asked me why I don't have a gym, because I know how much work it takes to run a gym. Your butt better be there all the time, at least initially. So, you have to have, and I think that's why 95% of businesses fail, is because they don't know what they're getting into. And then when they have some issues or some trouble, it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to abandon ship. I tried, I gave it my best. And imagine if that's how it was in bodybuilding. Well, I didn't win the show, so I'm just going to quit. There would be anybody left. So, that same determination that you have, you've got to be realistic and honest with yourself in bodybuilding. It's the same thing in business. You've got to be realistic. You've got to understand basic accounting. You got to understand what your revenue is, what your expenses are. You've got to understand where you're getting your returns, where you're blowing money. You've got to understand how you're branding. Are people going to really think about your brand? What do they think about when they think about your brand? What do they associate it with? Are you hiring good people? You're hiring bad people? So there is a lot of work involved. And, that same process is involved with bodybuilding, which what I mean by that is examination. Examining, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Being able to really humble yourself and look at that. It's the same thing in business. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And understanding your numbers and all that. Very, very similar mindset.
Yeah, it's always interesting, the skills that we pick up in one area, how we transition them to other different areas. And I think bodybuilding, any type of, I guess, sport pursuit, for lack of a better word, whether it's a martial art, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's, like being a professional athlete, whether it's CrossFit, whatever it might be, those same thought processes, those same skills that you learn can be transitioned to every other area of your life, as long as you're aware of what you're actually learning.
Yeah, right.
Who was your biggest inspiration for bodybuilding and throughout your career?
For bodybuilding, I would have to say Tom Platz, because I really admired his intensity and his passion. Like, you can watch a Tom Platz interview and you can feel the passion. Like, you can listen to his interview now, like ones that he's doing now, and you can still feel the passion that he has. And I also liked his intelligence, right? I mean, he was a guy talking about Golgi tendon organs and, fast and slow twitch muscle fibers and 2X's and 2B's. And he was a really intelligent guy. And I really admired that about him. And then, when he was doing the WBF stuff, he was a business guy. He's the guy that Vince McMahon hired to manage bringing the athletes. And he was a smart business guy. So I really admired him. I also really admired the kind of person Lee Haney was. I felt like Lee Haney, with that gentleman, he didn't need to trash talk other people. I mean, he did a little bit, but not much. He let his actions speak for himself. He carried himself I think he set one of the best examples ever in history of bodybuilding, and look how healthy he is now. He's just a great guy. So those were the two that I really like. Man, those are two guys I really would like to emulate. I love the way Lee carried himself. And, you will never find anybody that has a bad word to say about Lee Haney. Like, there's nobody out there. And that passion that Tom Platz had, I just thought that was amazing. So those were the two that really, I think, were the two I respected the most.
We spoke very briefly about, I guess, almost going all in on your passion and doing everything that it takes daily to get to where you want to be. We briefly talked about strength coaching, but if we're looking at, this is going to be two separate questions, but firstly, bodybuilding. If people are serious about bodybuilding in terms of education, where do you suggest they go first and foremost? Is there any particular books? Is there any particular websites? Obviously, there's going to be yours, which we'll tag and everything below. But where do you suggest they go to get the necessary knowledge to be able to pursue a bodybuilding career?
There's a couple sources I think that are pretty good. Brad Schoenfeld has a great book. If you look at Brad Schoenfeld's last two books, really, they're really good. I'm trying to think what he calls it, the science and development, or if you just look up Schoenfeld, Schoenfeld. I can't think of the title of the book, but I got the original and then I've got the updated version too. Brad does a really good job explaining all the principles behind training, and he has a lot of data in there to look at and consider. Scott Stevenson has a book, I think it's called Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach, and it's also very comprehensive. I think those two books are probably the two that I could recommend the most. Those are really well thought out, really good books.
Yeah, the Brad Schoenfeld one is Science and Development of Muscle Hypertrophy. Is the
Yeah,
book.
great book, fantastic book.
And similarly in business, people, what are the I guess the basic fundamentals of, like, if you want to run your own business, whether you call yourself an entrepreneur or not, you want to do your own thing, what are a couple of the basic fundamentals you sort of need to be clued up on?
I think a really good one, there's a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko. I assume you know.
Yes, I've read it. Yes,
I like that book because it really challenges you to take ownership, as the name of the book says, and to really look at situations and don't point the finger, point it back at yourself and think, what could I have done different? And I have that philosophy now, in business much more than I had 4 years ago. And I've done better as a result of it. Just being able to humble yourself and look at yourself and just say, okay, what am I doing wrong? Instead of just being quick to point the finger at other people. I think if that's your base philosophy, you're already off to a good start. Then the second thing I would say is you got to surround yourself with good people. I mean, you have to, like when you're hiring people, you've got to look at their character first. Like it might be tempting to hire somebody that, I got 25 years experience. Yeah, but if you're a crappy person, they're probably going to do something to your business that's not good. I'd rather have someone with 2 years experience that I believe in. I can trust them because I can teach them some things too. But that character, you can't really teach that. Like they're either a good person, or they're kind of a crappy person. So I think if you surround yourself with good people, you're also off to a great start business-wise. So I think that ability to humble yourself and really try to think about the mistakes you're making instead of pointing the finger is key. I think surrounding yourself with good people is key. And then the other thing I'd finish with is if somebody's hurting your business or they're not what you want or need, you've got to cut the string. You got to let them go. It's that old saying about cancer. You get cancer on your arm and it's going to hurt like heck to cut your arm off, but it's going to save your life. Or you could let cancer infect the rest of your body. I think business is that way too. When you got people are kind of they're that cancer, you got to cut them off. You got to get rid of them.
Yeah, I love what you said there. It's hiring good, honest people first, because you can generally teach them the skills that you need them to learn for whatever the position that is, but you can't teach character. I missed this question. I had it written down that I wanted to ask is did you have, or do you still have a favorite training methodology? What was the thing you enjoyed doing the most when you were sort of training? Was it German volume training? Was it just an insane amount of drop sets, an insane amount of rest pause sets? What was the favorite training methodology that you like using?
So you got to understand how I work mentally to understand the answer to my question. So first of all, you hear about, oh, John put all these people through really hard workouts. Well, I'm doing it myself. I lead by example. I would never tell somebody to do something crazy if I wasn't willing to do it myself. So I never, when I was at my best intensity wise, which is the part that I enjoyed the most, which was your question, it was when I was doing the craziest stuff possible. Wasn't necessarily when I was the strongest, but it was when I was just doing stuff that people really couldn't just keep up with me. I would just say, all you gotta do is do what I do. and inevitably the intensity was just too much for him. But I mean, you know, getting on the leg press, for example, putting like 900 on there and thinking, well, I could do 10 or 15 with it. So I'm going to go for 40. I want to find a way to get 40 reps, you know? So, you know, just, I'm going to do a drop set on hack squats, and then I'm going to put a bar on my back. I'm going to lunge after a drop set on hack squats. Just generally doing stuff that really tested my pain tolerance, because that was one of the other things I liked about Tom Platz, was he obviously had an extremely high pain tolerance. So if you look at some of the things that I talk about, like say for hamstrings, doing a set on the leg curl where you do a drop, and then when you can't do full reps, you do partials, and then when you can't do partials, you do an iso hold. That's extremely painful if you do it right. It's very painful. Not many people can do that. And just doing stuff like that constantly was what I really enjoyed. Just doing stuff where, you know, you walk out of the gym and you say, not many people could have done that. There's not many people on this planet that could have went through the pain I just went through. And there's a little bit, honestly, there's a little bit of pride in that. Like, that's pretty cool that I could do that. Yeah. So those are the funnest times. My strength peaked actually for my lower body in my early 20s, which is pretty crazy. And then my upper body, probably in my 40s, early 40s. But, you know, when I was in my early 20s, I also had a really fun period of time when I was 24 years old, 23, 24, 25, where I was squatting near 800 pounds. And that was a different kind of fun. That was like, man, I'm really strong. And not many people can do this. And then, you know, I had some injuries and my training changed a little bit. So I started to rely more on that just crazy high intensity, different stuff. And that worked well too. That worked awesome. So I think though, overall, just the funnest times I had was when we were just pushing, trying to, you know, in a way we were trying to kill each other, but it's more like when I would do a set and I would think about stopping, I would say, nope, I'm setting the bar high, because then the guy's got to go after me and then he's got to do it. Right. So those were the times that I really enjoyed. I mean, if you had to label it, it was probably high intensity, high volume, high everything. It was probably high everything. 99% of people would probably say that's overtraining. And it probably was for 99% of people, but it wasn't for me. So those are the fun times.
Yeah, I think that's what makes training at that level fun, being able to, again, train with like-minded people, again, surrounding yourself with good people, and wanting to challenge yourself so much to set that bar high, and then wanting to come in there and go, nah, John, I'm going to try and beat you. I'm going to make sure that you need to set that bar a little bit higher. And it's just this, I think the gym has this, regardless of what you're in, bodybuilding, CrossFit, whatever it might be, there's this really cool camaraderie that can be sort of involved in that space. And it's quite magical, really.
Yeah, for sure.
As we're sort of closing off, is there, just from the conversation we've had, three takeaway points that people can implement in their lives today?
Well, the first one's going to sound a little preachy, but it's to be good to people. It's to be fair. It's to treat people right, treat people with respect, love each other. That'd be number one. That'd be the first message I would want people to get. The second thing is like, you know, don't expect anything from anybody. Like, you got to make stuff happen yourself. You just sit around and hope things go your way. You got to make things happen, and you're going to fail along the way. You're going to have struggles, but if you don't put your mind to something and really have those daily habits that support it, it's just not going to happen for you. It's just not. So, you know, you've got to really put everything into it. Don't expect the world to give you anything, and go out and earn it. That'd probably be number two. And number three would be, man, don't take yourself so serious. It's kind of the opposite of number two. It's don't take yourself so serious. It's have fun, laugh, enjoy yourself, have a good time. You know what's really healthy is laughing. Like, the endorphins you get, like all these good things happen when you laugh and you have fun. So try to do that as much as you can as well.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot, an old Greek saying, I think it's like, let laughter be thy medicine, or something around that nature. And it's completely true. Yeah. Lastly,
yep.
What's next for you, John? What are you working on this year? Can you share with us any projects coming up? Are you going to be doing any for the people obviously in the US or potentially worldwide when things open up? Any seminars or anything of that nature in 2021?
Yeah, the seminar thing is really, man, I don't know what we're going to do with that, just based on everything that's going on. Like I hear in Australia, for example, that if I go there, I've got to stay in a hotel for 2 weeks in quarantine.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna, as much as I love Australia, I'm not going to sit in a hotel for 2 weeks. So I don't think I'm going to be doing as many seminars this year. I think I'm getting ready to launch a new training program, and then I've got another one that I'm going to be coming with probably 6 weeks after that one, maybe 8 weeks. So it's a power building program I'm working on with Dave Tate right now. And then my summer's going to be real busy. I'm coaching football here. I coach youth football. So then I've got, after football's over is the Olympia is in November. And I'm going to have a lot of Olympians I'm bringing to that show. We had a good year this year. We had 2 first places and 2 second places on my team. So I expect another really good year next year. So it's going to be, right now it's building programs. And then in the summer, it's going to be coaching football. And then at the end of the year, it's going to be getting the Olympians all ready to have a good showing.
That sounds like quite the living the life of fulfillment.
Well, I'm doing what I love, so I mean, I can't complain. Like, I love coaching football. I love helping people, when they get to the Olympic level, that's awesome too. Yeah, I mean, I can't complain, man. Like, life is good.
And lastly, where can people find you? Where's the best place to reach out, ask questions, follow your journey?
I'd appreciate a follow on my YouTube. My YouTube is Mountain Dog 1. We're coming up on 500,000 subscribers, so help push me over that 500,000 mark. And my Instagram is also Mountain Dog 1. We're coming up on 300,000 subscribers, so help push me over that 300,000. And my Facebook is just John Meadows. And but those are definitely the best places to find me. And again, my website's mountaindogdiet.com.
Beautiful. And all those will be linked in the show notes below, as always, ladies and gentlemen. And let's get John over those milestones. John, thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
If you want to optimize your health, fitness, and lifestyle and learn the tools and the tricks and the knowledge to be able to sustain a healthy and fit lifestyle, then please go check out my books on my website. As a loyal subscriber, you get a cheeky little discount. So I'll see you in there.